All right, so I came across this really interesting interview with Daniel Kokotajlo from OpenAI. And let me tell you, it was packed with some pretty interesting stuff about the future of AGI, artificial general intelligence. This chat happened on the Hard Fork podcast by the New York Times. And while the whole conversation was way longer, there are 4 points that really stood out and kind of blew my mind. First off, Daniel dives deep into what's happening at OpenAI, especially the parts most of us don't get to hear about, the safety protocols, and how they manage all that brainy AI stuff. Then he spills some beans about Microsoft's involvement, which is pretty intriguing given their heavyweight influence. And to top it off, he even gives us a sneak peek into when he thinks AGI will really start shaking things up. So let's rewind a bit and think back to those dates we've talked about in previous videos about AGI. It seems like there's one specific date that keeps popping up in everything I've seen so far, from blogs and posts to interviews with OpenAI folks. Now, it might be a coincidence, or maybe there's more to it, so let's not waste any more time and dig into what's actually happening. So, in this first clip we're checking out today, honestly, this caught me off guard, like totally breaking news. Daniel Kokotajlo from OpenAI mentioned something wild about Microsoft. Apparently, there was this internal safety team at Microsoft. They were supposed to give the green light before releasing GPT-4 into a region in India. But guess what? Microsoft just went ahead and dropped it without any approval. I mean, if I was to read this on a random forum, I'd be really skeptical. But coming from someone inside OpenAI, that's a whole different level of whoa. So let's dive into this clip because it pretty much speaks for itself.
And this board had some people from Microsoft on it and some people from OpenAI on it. And it was supposed to deliberate and then eventually approve major deployments on the GPT-4 scale or bigger. So it had been set up prior to reaching the GPT-4 scale, but it was set up with the expectation that once we hit that level and thereon, it would be something that would gate deployments. You'd have to get approval from the DSP. While the DSP was still deliberating about this, me and various other people started hearing rumors that Microsoft had just gone and deployed it anyway, specifically in India. And so we had some conversations about this. We made inquiries to managers and so forth. I don't want to get into too much detail about who said what to whom and so forth, but I came away disappointed because it seemed like we had this self-governance structure in place and there was a violation of the structure. And rather than, holding Microsoft accountable for doing this, we were afraid to damage our relationship with Microsoft, given the sensitivities involved. They have all this compute. We're trying to.
So there you have it, folks. A truly shocking revelation. A lot of people were betting that Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI was going to be this tight ship, especially when it came to safety protocols. But it seems like that's not the case. There was a clear agreement that Microsoft was supposed to get approval before pushing the model out for public release. And, well, that just simply didn't happen. I think this oversight, or let's call it a miss, by the safety board is pretty remarkable. Considering everything that's happened at OpenAI, I can't say I was completely shocked, but it's definitely thrown me for a loop. I think it's a wake-up call that no matter how professional or strict we expect organizations to be, like they're running some military-style operation, mistakes will happen. People have their own motivations, sometimes even greed plays a part, and it shows us just how human we all are. Even a giant like Microsoft can rush out a product if they think it'll push their agenda forward. And that, my friends, is quite telling about what we might expect in the future. Now, shifting gears to something that's been buzzing lately, there's talk about the potential nationalization of OpenAI. This idea isn't coming out of thin air, especially since they just brought someone on board who's had a long stint at the NSA. But that's just the start of the crazy. Here's where things get really wild. Daniel touched on the post-coup culture at OpenAI, particularly after Ilya Sutskever's shakeup. And guess what? The vibe towards the safety team was pretty much a bold F you, safety people. Now, you'd think that the safety folks would be among the most respected in such a high-stakes environment, right? But it turns out, after the coup, there was this whole shift that turned things upside down. It's strange and honestly a bit shocking to hear that this was the atmosphere.
And Helen Toner and Dash, after that whole fight, it was like, oh man, things have sort of polarized. Like, I don't think that we're going to like talk it out and pivot. And then also just sort of on a personal level, I think there was a lot of anger directed at sort of safety people such as myself, because the perception was that that the old board was being dishonest and that they didn't really fire Sam because he was insufficiently candid towards them, but rather they fired him because they wanted to slow down and he didn't, and they needed an excuse. So I think that as a result, there was.
So the post-Ilya Sutskever era at OpenAI really flipped the script, especially around the culture of the safety team. That was surprising to say the least, but when you hear that the super alignment team at OpenAI sort of disbanded, or at least got shaken up, you start to wonder what the heck was going on behind the scenes. Maybe this chaos was part of why Jan Leeke decided to leave, or why some of their researchers got the boot. Could these shifts be why OpenAI made some of the decisions it did? I guess it's hard to pin down. But it's undeniable that these changes could have been a big factor, especially post-board coup. Now, this next bit is just as intriguing. Daniel throws out a date for AGI, 2027. That's the year he mentions, and it's the same one I've been hearing from just about every other source. Even Sam Altman's now saying 5 to 10 years, though he seems a bit more conservative, probably because of the massive hardware and computing power that will be needed. But isn't it fascinating that all these OpenAI insiders are pointing to such a near future for such a game-changing technology? This timeline really makes you think about how fast things are moving in the world of AI.
I think that publicly available information about the capabilities of these models and the progress that's been happening over the last 4 years is already enough to make extrapolations and say, holy cow, it seems like we could get to AGI, in 2027 or so or sooner. You don't need any secrets to be able to make that inference. And then for the second thing about like, is this a big deal? Is this really dangerous?
So yeah, Daniel made an interesting point about AGI. He said that even if you're just looking at the publicly available information, not even diving into the confidential stuff, it's pretty clear that 2027 could be the year when AGI really starts to take off. It's like all the signs are pointing towards this monumental shift coming up pretty soon.
Holy cow, it seems like we could get to AGI, in 2027 or so, in the labs in secret.
That's pretty incredible, right? I mean, hearing about AGI predictions from someone actually at OpenAI really adds a layer of authenticity to all the buzz. It's one thing to read speculation in a blog post or hear it just randomly a few times, but when you've got an insider talking about the cutting-edge tech they're working on and the expected advancements, it really paints a vivid picture of what's coming. I think this interview was not just insightful, but also quite fascinating, similar to another one we saw recently with Leopold Aschenbrenner, where he discussed the future of AGI and ongoing projects at OpenAI. But here's something else that's intriguing. The New York Times did some deep diving into Sam Altman's influence. Now, Sam is the CEO of OpenAI, which already puts him in a pretty influential position. But what if I told you that his influence might stretch even further, to the point he could potentially become the most powerful man in the world? Sounds a bit like an exaggeration, right? But hear me out. What they reported first is both true and insightful. It really begs the question, what are Sam Altman's motives behind his strategic moves in the AI industry?
For Sam Altman, right? Because this is a person who is already rich. But if he has a piece of all the biggest and most important companies in AI, then if you fast forward to the time period that Daniel's worried about when AGI is arriving, one person is going to have a staggering amount of power in that universe, right? He will be the CEO of OpenAI, and he will be a major shareholder of many of the most important companies in the space. Why do I bring this up? In that kind of world, you want to know who is this person and what sort of governance structures are around him to rein him in, because right now it does seem like we're on a trajectory for Sam Altman to be one of the most powerful people in the world. Totally.
So there you have it, folks. Sam Altman could legitimately be one of the most powerful people in the world. And honestly, that's not an overstatement. Imagine being at the helm of a company like OpenAI, which could lead the charge in AGI development. Then throw in the potential for major partnerships with pretty much every tech company that would rely on this groundbreaking technology. Think about it. If you're steering the ship at the heart of the majority of future software innovations, wouldn't that position you as one of the most powerful figures globally. And it's not just about having a bunch of influential ties. When you factor in the advent of artificial superintelligence, the entire landscape of power dynamics is bound to shift. There's just no outsmarting something like that. So, considering all these elements, it's hard to see how he wouldn't be at the forefront of this transformation. You know, folks, this whole discussion is sparked by an interview that I think is absolutely worth a full watch. I mean, it's pretty crazy. From Microsoft's bold move, releasing a model without any approval, to the stark shift in culture at OpenAI where the safety team got silenced, and then topping it off with the prediction of AGI by 2027. It's all quite staggering. Anyway, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. And, as always, see you in the next one, folks. You all take care.